join you to provide an overview of two actions Alberta has taken in order to assert our constitutional jurisdiction and protect firearms owners from an increasingly hostile federal government. Now, first, I'd like to go over the actions that have led to today's announcement. First, in 2020, the federal government issued a ban on more than 1,500 models of firearms. Then, in October of this year, the federal government implemented what they characterize as a, quote, freeze on the transfer of handguns, end quote, an action that bans new handgun ownership. And then third, a month later, at the last minute, the federal government tabled amendments to Bill C-21 that ban shotguns, rifles used by hunters, farmers, and target shooters. Now, taken all together, these actions will criminalize hundreds of thousands of Canadians overnight, the majority of which reside in Western Canada. And it's becoming increasingly clear that the federal Liberal government is pursuing a strategy to ban all legal firearms ownership. The federal Liberals scared Canadians by describing some firearms as, their terminology was, quote, assault style, end quote, even though they knew that the only difference between these firearms and conventional rifles and shotguns is the styling. They also told Canadians repeatedly that these measures were not targeting law-abiding hunters and farmers. And this lie was laid bare by the amendments to C-21. At the very same time, Minister Mendicino and his government have failed to take action against the importation and smuggling of illegal firearms from the United States. Their actions are targeting Western Canadians for a reason. This is about shoring up their own political support. To do so, they seek to divide us. Western Canadians versus Eastern Canadians, rural Canadians versus urban Canadians. And Albertans have had enough. So today, we are taking action. First, as Alberta's Attorney General, I have directed that the Alberta Crown Prosecution Service take over the handling of charges involving the Firearms Act starting January 1st, 2023. Currently, the federal government handles cases involving the Federal Firearms Act. Provinces have the constitutional jurisdiction to handle federal criminal law charges, including charges under the Firearms Act. Alberta's Crown Prosecution Service already has the expertise to take on this work, and any further resources will be provided. I've sent a letter to the Federal Minister of Justice as of this morning advising him that Alberta is taking this jurisdiction back. Alberta's Crown prosecutors will now determine whether or not to pursue charges under the Firearms Act, not federal government lawyers. And second, a new protocol has been issued to Crown prosecutors which outlines how to handle charges related to the federal firearms ban. While respecting the operational independence on individual cases, the new protocol provides prosecutors with guidance on evaluating the public interest on whether or not to pursue charges. The protocol states that it will not be in the public interest to proceed with the prosecution of a charge of a possession of a banned firearm where the following factors exist. First, that the accused lawfully obtained the firearm or prohibited device before May 1st, 2020. Second, that the firearm or prohibited device was reclassified as prohibited on May 1st, 2020. And then third, the accused has not been charged with any other offense in relation to the possession or use of that firearm. Now, right now, there is an amnesty in place that allows the federal government's amnesty that allows firearms owners to possess firearms they purchased before the ban was in place. And this amnesty period ends October 30th, 2023. Just like with the implementation of the long gun registry, we believe that the federal government will extend this amnesty period further as it becomes clear to the public and to the media that Public Safety Canada does not have the capacity, the wherewithal, or the resources to confiscate hundreds of thousands of firearms across Canada. However, that does not mean that they are willing to take any risks. If the federal government does not extend the amnesty, or so that we are willing to take any risks. If the federal government does not extend the amnesty, any person that owns a firearm listed in the 2020 ban will be criminalized by the federal government in October of 2023. That's less than a year from now, and why we have to take action now. Further, over the past month, we have seen the federal government go even further than we could have imagined with the proposed amendments to Bill C-21. These amendments ban hundreds of new models of legally owned shotguns and rifles. These actions clearly target hunters, they clearly target farmers, and they are clearly target sport shooters who collectively own hundreds of thousands of firearms that could soon be prohibited. If these amendments are successful, Bill C-21 will be the most sweeping and arbitrary ban in Canadian history. The ban will not only be unenforceable, but it will criminalize hundreds of thousands of Canadians. And if that happens, we will consider extending this protocol to cover the firearms targeted under the amendments proposed to Bill C-21. Thank you for your time today. I'll now turn things over to Chief Firearms Officer Bryant for her remarks. Thank you, Chief. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Minister, honored members of the press, ladies and gentlemen. Since my appointment, I have viewed all firearms issues through a public safety lens. Ensuring Albertans continue to enjoy a safe, orderly, and respectful society requires all participants in the legislative, regulatory, law enforcement, and judicial processes to keep focused on what really matters. The precious resources taxpayers entrust to us are not unlimited, and we must direct them to where they will do the most good. This means rejecting measures that are founded on sensationalistic calls for restrictions that are costly, ineffective, and lacking in any evidentiary basis. Albertans and other Canadians want problems solved, not used as wedge issues to divide us for narrow partisan political purposes. I have consulted widely with user groups, other concerned citizens, provincial and federal lawmakers, and law enforcement at all levels, and found very solid support for this approach, with one notable exception. Unfortunately, our current federal government continues to double down on failed approaches that would squander vast resources and criminalize some of the most law-abiding citizens in our country. I have been increasingly disturbed to see our federal government ignore calls to redirect its attention to the real issues of smuggling and illegal arms trafficking, and instead broaden its attacks to include ever more hunters, ranchers, sport shooters, Indigenous peoples, collectors preserving historical artifacts, and other law-abiding Canadians. I am heartened to see that our provincial government recognizes the inherently flawed nature of the federal approach and is doing everything in its power to protect the law-abiding from federal overreach. The law-abiding firearms community has a long track record of gladly complying with reasonable measures to ensure public safety. They willingly accept the need for some restrictions on their activities to protect our society from those who would do us harm. But the measures our federal government is currently proposing fail the tests of fairness, reasonableness, and effectiveness. I see today's announcement as welcome recognition of the need to protect Albertans from becoming collateral damage in the federal government's draconian campaign against firearms ownership by carefully vetted and trained Canadians of all backgrounds. Thank you.